They threw Coca-Cola on a black woman at work. Her billionaire husband came in and fired everyone. The brown liquid dripped down Nina Thompson's curls, soaking her navy blue blouse as Jessica Whitmore's cruel laughter echoed through the Apex marketing office in Manhattan. Oops. I thought you needed to refresh those mediocre ideas, the blonde manager sneered, dropping the empty can on Nina's desk. Look, everyone. The company's diversity initiative taking a Coca-Cola shower, shouted Brad Mitchell, the account coordinator, as he filmed everything with his iPhone 15. At his side, Samantha Chun, the HR assistant, laughed as she frantically typed on her cell phone. When you hire based on quotas and not competence, #realitychecknick. Nina stood motionless, soda dripping from her curly hair onto the reports she had meticulously prepared for the investor meeting. At 29, she was the only black analyst in a sea of privileged faces who had treated her like an outsider since her first day 6 months ago. You know what your problem is, Nina? Jessica approached her, her Chanel perfume mingling with the sweet smell of Coca-Cola. You don't know your place. You think you can sit at the same table as us just because you have some little public college degree. The glass-walled conference room had become a fishbowl of cruelty. Other employees watched from the common area, some embarrassed, most indifferent. It was the Friday before Labor Day, and the office was emptier than usual, the perfect time for calculated humiliation. Nina took a deep breath, her brown eyes shining with what Jessica misinterpreted as tears. In fact, it was determination. She calmly picked up her cell phone, ignoring the taunts that continued. Going to call your mommy? Or your Uber boyfriend? Brad sneered, moving the camera closer. I bet he lives in the Bronx and took the subway in today. Samantha let out a shrill laugh. Guys, you're terrible. But it's true, right, Nina? It must be hard to keep up that executive facade on an assistant salary. What those three corporate predators didn't know was that Nina Thompson wasn't just another employee trying to climb the corporate ladder. There were secrets in her life that even her HR files didn't reveal. Connections that transcended this toxic environment. Go ahead, Nina said softly, typing a single message into her phone. You just made the best decision of your lives. Jessica frowned, momentarily thrown off by Nina's serenity. What are you talking about? Did the sugar go to your head? In exactly 15 minutes, Nina consulted the discreet Patek Philippe watch on her wrist, a detail no one had ever noticed. You'll understand everything. Brad lowered his cell phone, a hint of doubt crossing his face. What 15 minutes? Are you delirious? Samantha, always the most perceptive of the trio, noticed something strange in Nina's behavior. There was no fear, no anger, just a disturbing calmness of someone who knows exactly what is coming. That was when the private elevator, the one only used by the board of directors, lit up on the 42nd floor. The doors opened with a soft ding, and 3 uniformed security guards stepped out first, followed by a tall, imposing man wearing a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than anyone's annual salary. Nina. Alexander Sterling's deep voice cut through the office silence like a knife. Are you okay? If looks could kill, Jessica, Brad, and Samantha would already be buried. What no one in that office could have imagined was that they had just crossed a line of no return, and that the woman they had chosen to humiliate was about to completely rewrite the rules of the corporate game. If you're enjoying this story of justice and revenge, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple analyst turned her humiliation into the biggest lesson those arrogant people would ever learn. Alexander Sterling stormed across the office, his expression changing from concern to controlled rage when he saw Nina's state. Drops of Coca-Cola were still dripping from her hair, staining the white collar under her navy blue blouse. Security, he called in a steely voice, escort these 3 people out of the building. Now. Jessica stepped forward, still trying to process the situation. Excuse me, but who the hell do you think you are? This is our office, and Nina is our employee. Wrong, Alexander positioned himself protectively beside Nina. This is my office. Sterling Enterprises is the majority shareholder of Apex Marketing. Brad dropped his iPhone with a clatter onto the marble floor. Samantha's face drained of color as she quickly searched LinkedIn. Sterling Enterprises. Chairman and CEO. Alexander Sterling. Net worth $7.8 billion. That's the problem when you judge people by their appearance, Nina finally said, calmly wiping her face with a tissue. You never bothered to find out who I really am. The story of Nina Thompson Sterling had begun 4 years earlier when she met Alexander at a technology conference at MIT. She was a full scholarship student, he was a guest speaker. What began as a discussion about machine learning algorithms evolved into a love that defied all social expectations. "But why are you working here?" Jessica stammered, her brain struggling to reconcile the woman she humiliated daily with the wife of one of the most powerful men in New York. Nina smiled for the first time since the incident. "Because I believe in earning my place, not inheriting it. I wanted to prove my worth without using the Sterling name." For the past 6 months, she had meticulously documented every instance of discrimination. Printouts of derogatory emails, audio recordings of meetings where her ideas were stolen, security videos showing the differential treatment. All stored in the cloud, waiting for the right moment. "You thought I was weak because I'm quiet," Nina continued, her eyes shining with determination. "You confused dignity with submission. Big mistake." A man in a gray suit emerged from the elevator, Marcus Chun, Sterling Enterprises' lead attorney and Nina's best man. "I have here complete documentation of moral harassment, racial discrimination, and creation of a hostile work environment," he announced, handing out folders to Jessica, Brad, and Samantha. "This is ridiculous." Brad exploded. "It was just jokes. She never complained." "Kidding?" Alexander picked up Brad's cell phone, which was still recording. "Like throwing Coca-Cola on her and calling it a diversity shower? Like saying she lives in the Bronx and took the subway here just because she's black." Samantha began to cry. "I have bills to pay. A family." "Funny," Nina observed dryly. "I have a family too. My mother is a nurse, my father a bus driver. They worked their whole lives to give me an education. And you thought that made me inferior." What none of the three knew was that, over the past few weeks, Nina had quietly implemented a new data analysis system that would increase Apex's efficiency by 47%. The project was worth millions and was registered exclusively in her name. "You have 30 minutes to clear your desks," Alexander declared. "Any attempt at retaliation will result in immediate legal action." Jessica, in a last act of desperation, turned to the other employees who stood watching in shock. "Are you going to let this happen? Everyone here knows what she's like." The silence was deafening. Several colleagues looked down, ashamed. Tom Williams, from the IT department, stepped forward. "Actually, Jessica, many of us admire Nina's work. You're the one who created this toxic environment." As security approached, Nina grabbed her laptop and personal files. She paused beside Jessica and whispered, "You know what's ironic? I was going to quit today. But you just gave me a much better gift." The Patek Philippe watch on her wrist, a wedding gift from Alexander, read 3:47 p.m. In exactly 13 minutes, a memo would be sent to the entire company announcing radical changes to the diversity and inclusion policy. "Alex," Nina touched her husband's arm. "I want to use this for something bigger. Not just revenge." He nodded, understanding immediately. "The scholarship fund you wanted to create?" "Exactly. 4 young black people in technology. Funded with the value of the shares these 3 owned in the company." What those corporate predators had interpreted as weakness was, in fact, the silent strength of those who gather evidence, wait for the right moment, and turn personal injustice into systemic change. But the game wasn't over yet. The true impact of what had happened that Friday afternoon was just beginning to unfold. Apex Marketing's digital panic room went into total meltdown when Marcus Chun began projecting a presentation titled Evidence of Hostile Environment Thompson vs. Apex Marketing onto the main screen in the auditorium. The emergency meeting called for all employees promised important clarifications regarding structural changes. "No, no, no." Jessica screamed, trying to reach Marcus' laptop. "You can't do that. It's invasion of privacy." "Invasion of privacy?" Alexander repeated with a cold smile. "Like these emails you sent to the entire department?" On the screen, a message from Jessica appeared, "The new diversity arrived today. I bet she won't last a month. Anyone want to bet on how long it'll be before she's back in the ghetto?" Brad paled when the next slide showed screenshots of a WhatsApp group called Elite Apex, where he posted daily photos of Nina with captions like "Found the missing maid," and "Someone call her Uber." "How did you get this?" Samantha gasped, seeing her own Instagram posts appear, including one where she secretly filmed Nina having lunch alone with the caption, "When the quota has no friends #reality." 6 months, Nina said calmly, walking to the center of the auditorium. For 6 months, you created a complete digital archive of your own discrimination. Every screenshot, every audio clip, every video. HR has copies of everything. The next slide revealed something that made the entire auditorium hold its breath. Project Prometheus, new predictive marketing analysis system. Developed by Nina Thompson Sterling. Estimated value, $47 million. Status, patented. While you were wasting your time humiliating me, Nina continued, I developed an algorithm that will revolutionize data analysis in marketing. Sterling Enterprises has already purchased the exclusive rights. Jessica staggered backward. Sterling Enterprises? But that means that every penny of profit this project generates over the next 20 years will go directly to the Nina Thompson Fund for Black Youth Technology Scholarships, Alexander added. Funded initially by the forced sale of the shares you 3 own in this company. Brad tried one last desperate gambit. This is extortion. We're going to sue you. Marcus Chin adjusted his glasses. Extortion is blackmail. We are merely presenting documented evidence of hate crimes, moral harassment, and systematic racial discrimination. Crimes which, incidentally, carry penalties of up to 5 years in prison in New York. The next slide showed the company's organizational chart. 3 boxes flashed red: Jessica Whitmore, Brad Mitchell, and Samantha Chun, all marked immediate termination, just cause. You can't fire us for just cause, Jessica shouted, tears of anger streaming down her face. We're going to fight this. You can try, Nina replied calmly. But I suggest you first watch the video Brad kindly recorded today, throwing Coca-Cola at me while yelling about diversity showers. The video began to play. The sound of Brad himself saying, I bet you live in the Bronx and took the subway here today, echoed through the silent auditorium. Several employees lowered their heads, ashamed that they had witnessed it without intervening. To top it off, Alexander announced, Sterling Enterprises is implementing a new compliance program across all subsidiaries. Any company that wants to maintain contracts with us will need to undergo rigorous diversity and inclusion audits. Samantha began to sob. My career, my reputation, it's all destroyed. Her reputation? Nina stared at her. You spent 6 months systematically destroying mine. Now you're experiencing the consequences of your own actions. The final slide appeared, Nina Thompson Fund initial commitment, $50 million. Goal, 1,000 full scholarships in technology for young black women over the next 5 years. $50 million. Brad almost choked. Where? From the discrimination fines you 3 will pay, from the bonuses that will be reversed, and from my personal donation, Nina explained. Oh, and every company you try to join will receive a complete dossier on the case. Good luck explaining in interviews why you were fired for documented racism. Jessica fell to her knees, finally understanding the extent of the destruction. Please. I have bills, a mortgage. Funny, Nina replied, her voice laden with devastating calm. I had bills too when you sabotaged my projects, stole my ideas, and made me question whether I belonged here. The difference is that I turned my pain into something constructive. You turned your privilege into cruelty. Security guards began escorting the 3 out of the building. On the big screen, one last message appeared, true diversity isn't about quotas. It's about recognizing that talent has no color, class, or zip code. As the auditorium erupted in applause, Nina Thompson Sterling remained center stage, the Coca-Cola long since dry on her shirt, but her dignity intact and her legacy just beginning. What no one in that room could have predicted was that this moment represented not just a personal victory, but the birth of a movement that would transform the entire tech industry in the years to come, proving that sometimes, the greatest revolution starts with one person refusing to accept the place others try to put them in. 6 months later, the auditorium of the Metropolitan Opera House in Manhattan was packed for the premiere of the documentary Code Nina, How Corporate Racism Created a Revolution. Nina Thompson Sterling took the stage to thunderous applause, wearing an elegant black Armani suit, not to impress, but because she could now choose what to wear without judgment. When they threw Coca-Cola at me, she began her speech, her voice echoing through the historic theater, They didn't know they were watering the seed of a change that has now benefited 347 young black people with full scholarships in technology. In the audience, cameras focused on emotional faces, Fortune 500 CEOs, civil rights activists, and most notably, the first Nina Thompson Fund scholarship recipients, brilliant young people from marginalized communities now studying at MIT, Stanford, and Harvard. The documentary revealed something shocking. Jessica Whitmore had tried to sue Nina for defamation and moral damages, but her own lawyers dropped the case when they saw the evidence. Brad Mitchell, after being rejected for 23 job interviews, now worked as an app delivery driver, ironically, the profession he had so ridiculed. Samantha Chun moved to a small town in the countryside, deleted all her social media accounts, and according to sources, spent her days writing apology letters that were never answered. The most ironic thing, Nina continued, is that 3 days before they threw Coca-Cola at me, I had finished an algorithm that detects patterns of discrimination in corporate environments using artificial intelligence. They literally gave me the final data I needed to validate the system. The Equi-Hire app, developed by Nina, had already been adopted by 1,200 companies globally, generating $180 million in revenue in the first quarter, all profits going toward expanding the scholarship program. Microsoft, Google, and Apple formed a historic partnership to implement the system in their hiring practices. Tom Williams, the IT colleague who had stood up for Nina on that fateful day, was now CTO of Sterling Enterprises' Technology Diversity Division. Seeing Nina turn humiliation into revolution taught me that silence in the face of injustice is complicity, he told the New York Times. The most emotional moment of the evening came when Marcus Thompson, Nina's father, took the stage. The retired bus driver, who worked 40 years to put his daughter through school, held the Nobel Peace Prize trophy that Nina had just received, the first black person to be honored for innovation in social justice technology. My daughter has always been brilliant, he said, his voice breaking. But they only saw her color. Now the whole world sees her brilliance. On the screen, images of the Apex marketing office appeared. The company had filed for bankruptcy after losing all of its contracts with Sterling Enterprises and its subsidiaries. The building now housed the Nina Thompson Institute for Technological Equity, where young black people were developing solutions to combat systemic racism using AI. Jessica Whitmore made one last public appearance on an obscure podcast, trying to play the victim. I lost everything over a silly joke. The video went viral, not out of sympathy, but as a perfect example of how privilege blinds people to the gravity of their actions. The comments were merciless. You didn't lose everything over a joke. You reaped what you sowed during years of racism. Nina ended her speech with words that would go viral. They ask me if it was revenge. I say it was justice. Revenge destroys. Justice builds. I turned every drop of that Coke into fuel to change an entire system. Because the greatest revolution isn't taking down those who oppress us, it's building ladders so others don't have to go through what we did. As she stepped off the stage, her phone vibrated. It was a message from a 16-year-old girl in the Bronx. Ms. Sterling, I just got accepted into the scholarship program. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Thank you for not giving up that day. Nina smiled, remembering her own words that fateful afternoon. You have just made the best decision of your lives. And indeed they had. Just not in the way they expected. A year later, the Nina effect became an academic term to describe how exposure to institutional racism can catalyze systemic change. Jessica, Brad, and Samantha became case studies in universities about the consequences of prejudice in the corporate environment. Meanwhile, Nina Thompson Sterling continued her mission, to transform every act of injustice into an opportunity for social change. The lesson was crystal clear. In that Manhattan office, 3 people chose the path of hatred and lost everything. 1 person chose the path of justice and changed the world. Because in the end, racism doesn't just destroy its victims, it mainly destroys those who practice it. Have you ever witnessed an injustice that could have been transformed into positive change? Share your story of overcoming adversity in the comments. If this story of justice and transformation touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell for more stories that prove that true revenge is not destroying those who hurt us, but building a world where no one else is hurt in the same way.